Okay, guys, I got a new presentation here. Let me just make sure everything's working. This is going to be a good presentation, I think, as to where we are right now. Okay, yeah, looks like I'm live. So, title of this presentation is "There Never Was a Four-Year Cycle," and it really is a presentation on kind of where we are right now in this bull market, and I think we are still in a bull market. All right, so let me get my slides here accurate. Here, get my setup here. Okay, so there never was a four-year cycle. Never was. Bitcoin's not about to get quantum hacked. Not no danger of it in the next 5 years. Just zero danger. But through all of 2025, everybody was bullish on Q4. Everybody. And here's one quote that I think just really stands out. Q4 will be unbelievable for a variety of reasons, Eric Trump. Now, I think if you remember Eric Trump, I think in February, he was like, we're buying ETH here. It's a great buy. Thank me later. So Eric Trump, sort of the inverse Kramer of 2025, said that Q4 is going to be unbelievable for a variety of reasons. Even the most conservative among us, my friend Joe Carlisale, said, I have a 130K target. And even after October 10th, said, my target remains. So the most cautious bulls among us said that they had a 130K target. Of course, I said, Joe's way too bearish. It's going to 200K. Of course, Tom Lee was even more bullish than me. He said it's going to 250, guys. So even the more cautious bulls thought Q4 was going to be great. We're going to hit 150 before the bears get in control. That's my friend Omar said that. So I think that's pretty telling, very universal. I think we'll have a blow off top. That's our buddy India Bitcoin Man said that, and I think that's also an interesting statement. A lot of people thought, hey, it may go down, but we're going to have a blow off top before it goes down. And a lot of tourists, as we call them, saw easy money in this. A lot of OGs saw this and said, there's going to be a blow off top in November. I'm going to sell in October or September. And a lot of this was made possible by in-kind contributions, which went live for authorized participants in July. But that kind of meant if you were a whale and you had, let's say, 1,000 Bitcoin, you could find a way to get those Bitcoin in to IBIT and then sell calls against it, borrow against it, do all kinds of things again, or just sell it. And in 2025, regulatory environments made it a lot easier for some of those coins to come in from the cold. You couldn't have done this 2 years earlier. It wasn't possible. And I think what happens here is when everybody thinks one thing, the market does the opposite. That's true in stocks. That's especially true in Bitcoin. So long-term buyers kept accumulating through all of 2025. IBIT was the biggest ETF in all of the ETFs this year, and it did it in a down year. Had more inflows than GLD. Now, let's think about that a second. You would think that this would cause BTC to soar, right? BTC is 1/15th of gold. So if you have even roughly equivalent amount of inflows, you would think BTC might do 20 times better than gold. Just on the margin, it's a much, much smaller asset, and you would expect there to be a much bigger multiplier effect. You would expected that, but instead, gold went up 50% despite being, a $20 trillion asset, and Bitcoin is down 8% so far on equivalent flows. So the issue is clearly not ETF buyers. Clearly not. So what is the issue? Um, what is the issue? Uh, and the issue is simple. The uh, the issue is OG selling. So MSTR is also massively bullish. Okay, Saylor bought 23 billion in Bitcoin. He bought more Bitcoin in 2025 than he did in 2024. So again, we've got this massive buying from kind of the TradFi complex. So if the ETFs are net buying and people are talking about institutional narrative and whatever you say, the net sum of all this is that ETFs and MSCR are buying like crazy. So who's selling? There's two people who are selling: OGs and speculators. So OGs are traumatized by 2022. I lived through it. It was tough. Watching your Bitcoin holdings go down from 69,000 to 15,000, not easy. And a lot of them just can't stand a repeat for a lot of different reasons. Those who've held since 2016 or earlier, well, those guys have seen two cycles. And each of these cycles is spaced 4 years apart. Now, reptile brain sees a pattern. Chartists go back to 2013 and they see three cycles. They ignore 2011, which kind of breaks the model. 2011 to 2013 is a 2 year cycle, so that doesn't work. They just throw it out. Very convenient. They ignore that more important fact that Bitcoin moves in log time like a power law. So, you know, everybody who's charting in linear time is really missing one of the most important facts is that Bitcoin really ultimately moves in log time. Um, that's just the statistical nature of it, and there's a decreasing sort of exponential growth. We call the power law. Now, Plan B cemented this false narratives of halvenings leading to 4 year cycles. And, even though that was pretty much discredited by 2019, it really, a lot of people even today, follow Plan B. I mean, a million people do. So, this false narrative of it's all due to halvings, there's a 4 year cycle, hard to break. A lot of these kind of Plan B guys thought you just add a zero every 4 years. Every 4 years, you go from $1,000 Bitcoin to $10,000 Bitcoin to $100,000 Bitcoin. So that's kind of where we got to that $100,000 Bitcoin level, and everybody said, "Well, I'm out, and I'll come back when it's on its path to go to 1 million Bitcoin." So that's sort of the OG, you know, Plan B approach. And even though the model is completely broken, our reptile brains still believe. And I think many felt that they could time this market. And so, they sold their Bitcoin early in anticipation of lower prices. And, then came October 10th. Well, that was the biggest glitch in history, according to our friend Tom Lee. 1/3 of all market makers got liquidated on that day. That was a bigger event than FTX actually in terms of market makers. I think we had 2 million people accounts get liquidated, 2 million on a single day. So that was a major move. Um, it was triggered by sort of two events. One was Trump putting a just 100% tariff on China for just briefly, and the second was this inclusion of MSTR potentially in the MSCI index. There's always some event. This case, there was two, and these two things triggered this massive cascading sell-off. Anyways, it was enough to cause a major correction. So there was this major narrative change. And quantum slid in there to add to the fear. So all of a sudden, Ray Dalio is a quantum expert. And, here he is saying, I don't really understand these things, but, it's a little scary. So, I'm just going to throw some quantum FUD out there and, call it a day. And you get guys like Nick Carter who haven't mentioned quantum at all, even, when the Google Willow stuff hit, in March. He wasn't a voice at all. It didn't Then all of a sudden in October, November, he starts, putting out these quantum pieces and he invests in a quantum chain startup. So, so Nick Carter's the, VC Castle Rock, but not a pure Bitcoin maxi. He's investing in a lot of crypto projects at this point. Um, and you get guys like Luke Groman who got spooked, right? They bought Bitcoin, and this is a small part of their portfolio, but it got to a meaningful size, and they saw this quantum stuff, and they're the first to say, "Listen, I don't even understand quantum," but they brought it up, and they used it as one of the reasons to get spooked. So X now is filled with quantum FUD all of a sudden. You didn't see any quantum FUD. There's a ton right around March, April, May. Then it kind of really died down, and there's a lot of people trying to push these quantum coins and other kind of very dubious kind of narratives. So they were trying to get rich off of quantum, and then people sort of didn't care, so that narrative died. And then now with the 1010 stuff, you got this quantum FUD all of a sudden. So where does that leave us? I'm going to try to tie all this together. Well, we're deeply oversold. Okay, we are at against the power law metric, which is my favorite way to look at things. Roughly 20%, 25%, depending on your model. And I say depending on your model because there is no one model for this. Do you do it annually? Do you do it monthly? Do you do it weekly, daily? And where do you start? Do you start in, the pizza day? Do you start in October 2010? What some of those initial choices may actually make a little bit of a difference. But regardless, we're deeply oversold. And there is no consensus for 2026 at all. So we had this massive consensus for 2025. Now, no consensus at all. Um, you know, the bullish people are cautiously optimistic. And, when you've kind of been, you know, very bullish and wrong, and, which I put myself in that camp. I mean, I'm not wrong in that I'm not trading it. So, yeah, I just thought we would be higher quite a bit. A lot of us are cautiously optimistic. But there's also a lot of us who are very bearish now, right? So there's a ton of people who are just outright bearish and outright, well, this confirms that we're in a 4-year cycle, etc. So I think we're in a completely different environment from 2025. Uh, and I think it's actually a great environment for a major bull run. I'm talking like, 2025, 2017, 2021, like, but something big, I think, not just like a 20, 30% move. I think there's massive good news lurking right now, despite all this bearishness. We got a new Fed chair. That's really positive. Rates are headed down, not up. We've never seen a real bear market where rates are headed down. That just we've never seen that. Including 2013. We had stable rates then, but they weren't headed down. So I think here we have a case where the rates are headed down. I just don't see that as being compatible with the bear market. And banks are completely embracing Bitcoin. We've got Schwab and Citicorp that are actually going to be allowing you to custody Bitcoin in Q1, Q2, and J.P. Morgan and Bank of America are not far behind. So we actually are going to have major, major structural reasons to really love Bitcoin here. Stable coins are happening, and that's a big deal. So I think, and the last thing, I think the fear greed is at extreme levels. We're at fear now, but we've had extreme fear for months, for almost 2 months. We've had 2 months of extreme fear. So everything is ready, in my opinion, for a major bull run. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but it means that the unlike 2025, where everybody believed that Trump was going to be amazing and everybody believed that Q4 is going to be great. And everybody, even the people who believed in the 4-year cycle, still thought that 2025 was going to be amazing. Now we don't have consensus. We have fear. We have a lot of great kindling in terms of the environment. And the last thing I say is LFG, guys. Let's fucking go, because I think this environment is unbelievable. This is actually the most one of the most best environments for it. And so, going back to the very beginning, I would just say, let's go back to the very beginning. There ever was a 4-year cycle. And my friend Steve Perrineau, is talking about modeling this stuff in log space as a zero 0.3 log year cycle. I'm not sure there's a zero 0.3 log year cycle anyways. I don't really believe that. But I think if there's any cyclicality, it's in log space, not in linear time space, because Bitcoin fundamentally is not evolving in linear time space. Linear time space means that, you know, this next 3 years is going to be equivalent to the 3 years we had in 2017. And it's not. We're in this cooling down phase. We're cooling down. We're decreasing everything logarithmically. So the expected returns are logarithmically decreasing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there never really was a 4-year cycle. So I hope you enjoyed my little presentation. It's recorded, so you can kind of see this thing. But yeah, I'm very bullish. I will talk to you guys later. Hmm, bizarre. How do I make sure? How do I turn this thing off?